The sun glowed like fire over the hills of Judah. Far below, in a quiet valley, a huge man with long, wild hair pushed a massive stone aside as if it were a feather. His name was Samson, and everyone in Israel whispered his name with awe. Samson's hair wasn't just hair, it was a symbol of his promise to God. Before he was born, an angel told his parents that he would be a Nazirite chosen by God to deliver Israel from their enemies, the Philistines. As long as Samson never cut his hair and obeyed God, his strength would remain. He could break ropes, lift boulders, and fight off entire armies. But he also had a problem. Samson often acted before thinking. One evening, as the wind danced across the fields, Samson walked toward the city of Gaza, one of the Philistine strongholds. His sandals kicked up dust. His heart beat with curiosity and pride. "Let's see what the mighty city of Gaza looks like," he said with a grin. He knew it was dangerous. The Philistines hated him for destroying their armies and humiliating their soldiers. But Samson loved adventure. As Samson entered Gaza, the city glowed with torches and laughter. It was a busy night. Merchants, guards, and travelers filled the streets. Samson pulled his cloak over his shoulders, trying not to stand out. But it was hard to hide a man built like a mountain. He stopped by a house near the city gate. Music drifted out, drums, laughter, and chatter. Samson smiled and walked inside. He didn't know that word of his arrival spread like wildfire. "Samson is in Gaza," someone whispered to a guard. "The enemy of the Philistines. He's here, in the city." Another man hissed. The Philistine soldiers gathered in the shadows outside. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, clenched his fists. "This time, he will not escape," he growled. "We'll wait at the city gates until morning. When he tries to leave, we strike." Outside the gate, dozens of soldiers surrounded the entrance, spears glinting under the moonlight. Heavy iron doors closed, and a massive wooden bar locked them tight. The trap was set. Midnight came. The city grew quiet. The streets emptied. The torches burned low. Samson lay resting, but his spirit stirred. Something didn't feel right. He opened his eyes. The air was tense. He could hear whispers, footsteps, the faint clink of metal armor. He smiled. "They think they can trap me. Let's see how strong these gates are." He stood up, stretching his arms like a lion waking from sleep. His shadow loomed over the room. He stepped outside into the cool night breeze. The moonlight made his long hair shimmer like silver threads. When Samson reached the city gate, the Philistine soldiers were ready. Hidden behind walls and barrels, they gripped their swords and spears, whispering to each other. "There he is, he's coming." Samson walked calmly toward the gate. He placed his giant hands on the cold iron doors. They were tall, higher than 3 men standing on each other's shoulders, and thick enough to stop a chariot. The soldiers prepared to attack, but then Samson laughed. "You think a gate can hold me?" he thundered. With a deep breath, Samson bent his knees, planted his feet, and grabbed the massive gateposts. The soldier's eyes widened. Veins bulged in his arms. Muscles rippled across his back. "Heave!" Samson roared, and with one mighty pull, he ripped the gates out of the ground. Iron bolts snapped. Dust flew. The ground shook. The entire city gate doors, bars, and all lifted off the hinges as if it were a toy. The Philistine soldiers froze, eyes wide, jaws hanging open. Samson laughed again. "Tell your leaders the gates of Gaza belong to me." The sound of cracking wood echoed through the night. Samson placed the gigantic gate on his shoulders. The weight would have crushed 10 men, but Samson carried it like a bundle of straw. Then, with a mighty step, he began to walk uphill straight toward the mountain facing Hebron. The soldiers chased after him, shouting, "Stop him! Stop him!" But none dared get too close. Every time Samson took a step, the earth trembled. Up, up, up he climbed, sweat glistening on his brow. The wind howled around him. The moonlight shone on the gate's iron frame. When he reached the top of the hill, Samson stopped, breathing heavily but smiling with triumph. He dropped the gates onto the rocky ground with a thunderous crash. The gates of Gaza, the pride of the Philistines, now lay broken on a hill in Israelite land. Samson raised his hands to the sky. "My strength comes from the Lord," he shouted. By sunrise, the story had spread across every town and village. Samson carried the gates of Gaza. The children shouted in the streets. "He lifted them all by himself," cried another. "The Philistines are terrified." An old man laughed. In Gaza, however, it was not laughter, it was rage. The Philistine leaders tore their robes and shouted, "He made fools of us again. How can one man humiliate a nation?" But Samson had already gone back home, resting under a tree, smiling as the morning birds sang. His spirit was joyful, but in the distance, a shadow was growing. The Philistines would never stop trying to bring him down. As Samson rested, a group of Israelite children ran up to him. "Samson, Samson," they cried, "tell us how you did it. How could you carry the gates?" Samson chuckled. "Do you really think I did it all by myself?" The children looked puzzled. "Didn't you?" He smiled gently. "No, little ones. My strength isn't just in my muscles. It's in my promise to God. As long as I obey Him, He gives me power beyond what any man can have." The youngest boy tugged on his robe. "So, your hair makes you strong?" Samson laughed. "Not exactly. My hair is a sign. It reminds me of the promise I made to God. Strength doesn't come from hair. It comes from the one who made me strong." The children nodded, eyes wide with wonder. That evening, Samson sat by a campfire with his people. The flames danced in his eyes. "Today," he said, "I carried the gates of Gaza not to boast, but to show that no wall or enemy can stand against God's will." A wise elder nodded. "But remember, Samson, true strength isn't only in the arms, it's in the heart that obeys." Samson looked thoughtful. Deep inside, he knew it was true. His adventures were great, but sometimes he had acted with pride instead of obedience. The elder's words reminded him that his power was not his own. Far away, in a dark palace in Gaza, the Philistine rulers gathered. "He humiliated us again," one said bitterly. "He stole our gates." Another shouted, "We must find his weakness." The commander growled. A woman with sharp eyes stepped forward. Her name was Delilah. "Perhaps," she said with a sly smile, "his heart can be broken easier than his bones." The rulers exchanged glances. The story of Samson was far from over. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Samson sat alone on the hill where the gates lay. The wind blew through his long hair. The massive iron doors gleamed faintly under the moon. He thought about the day's battle, the laughter, the shouting, the power that flowed through him. But most of all, he thought about God's presence. "Lord," he whispered, "thank you for your strength. Help me use it for good, not pride. Let my heart be as strong as my hands." In the stillness, it felt as though heaven itself listened. Years later, when the children who saw Samson grew older, they told their own children the story. Samson carried the gates of Gaza all the way to the mountain. They would say, "But remember, it wasn't his muscles that made him strong, it was God's power and His promise." The story became a legend, passed from generation to generation, a story not just about strength, but about faith, courage, and obedience. Lesson 1. God gives everyone a special gift, but we must use it to honor Him, not ourselves. Lesson 2. True strength comes from obedience and faith, not from muscles or power. Lesson 3. No wall, gate, or obstacle is too strong when God is with you. And though the real gates of Gaza are long gone, children still imagine the night when a single man chosen by God carried them to the top of a mountain. They imagine his laughter in the moonlight, the soldiers frozen in fear, and the mighty crash when he dropped the gates in triumph. And they remember, when you trust God, even the heaviest gates in your life can be lifted.